Hi, Doug here with another episode of That's All I Got to Say About That. Talking more recently about things that I consider to be possibly, not for sure, but very, very possibly significant in regards to the end of the age prophecies contained in the Bible. Today I want to talk to you specifically about this thing that involves 10 nations, a 10-nation alliance or a 10-nation confederation that is spoken of in Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 17 by the Apostle John. You do all of the studies, which I've done the work, and you put together that it looks very likely that just before the return of Jesus and the end of the age, there will be a 10-nation confederation of sorts that takes shape, all of which have some kind of relationship with Israel. Israel will be at the center of this alliance. Because, like I said in the last episode, Israel is at the center of end times prophecy. This 10-nation alliance involves Israel. Out of this alliance is going to come a covenant with Israel. It will be the backing entity to put the strength behind the covenant. And so, anyway, 10 nations surrounding Israel. Now, it may or may not literally be 10 nations. My default is to always go with the literal numbers in prophecy. But understanding sometimes numbers either are literal and also have a figurative meaning, or sometimes they just have a figurative meaning. I'm taking 10 nations as just for what it says, 10. The number that comes after 9 and is before 11. That being said, the nations that are involved, I'm not sure that we count from Daniel and John's point of view, like Edom, Moab, and Ammon. It may all fit into the Arabian Peninsula today, one nation as opposed to three different nations. Egypt does that involve the Sudan and Libya, or just Egypt if they're a part of it? So I hope you get what I'm saying here is there may be more than one modern nation that fits into what was considered one nation back in the day when this was written. We don't know that. The other factor is Israel one of the 10 nations involved in this alliance? Or is it, if there are 10 actual nations, is it nation number 11 that's involved in this? And what about the nation which the Antichrist, who ultimately brings this agreement about, he comes out of the 10 nations, is he an 11th nation? And then Israel's the 12th nation. I don't know for sure. Anyway, in my mind, I'm shooting for 10, but if it's 11 or 12 or 9, it's somewhere around there, it's still very significant. Why that it's even doubly significant is because this just does not happen all the time. This isn't just another news event that these nations are taking shape around Israel. And I'll talk about what I'm talking about in a second. When you see nations gathering in this confederation or an alliance, it's the first time anything like this has happened. I'm going to say period, because ever since they've been kicked out of the nation of Israel since 70 AD or 112 or 120, whenever the Bar Kokhba rebellion was, then they came back in 1948. This is the first time anything like this is taking shape in Israel, and it's prophesied to happen. This 10-nation alliance thing, it's a big prophecy that's going to happen just before the return of Jesus. Okay, so it's not like it happened throughout their history when they were in the land. Nothing like it ever happened then. Of course, it didn't happen when they were dispersed throughout the world. And up until President Trump's first term in office, what I'm talking about here, the Abraham Accords, had not happened. What had happened is in about 1978 or thereabouts, Egypt made a peace treaty with Israel, normalized relations. And then Jordan, I think it's 1994, they entered into a peace treaty with Israel. So then there's these three nations that they're somewhat getting along better, meaning they're trading with one another. It's easier to travel from one nation to the other. And they promise they're not going to shoot at each other, right? So they're in somewhat of a peace accord between those three nations. Well, in President Trump's first term in office, he started to bring about this thing called the Abraham Accords, where the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain joined together and said, hey, we want a piece of that peace with Israel action also. Then Morocco and the Sudan, they said, we want to do that too. Well, before COVID happened and everything started falling apart, they never really ratified their agreement, but they have this promise of being a part of the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia has been courted as being a part of the Abraham Accords. And in fact, President Trump, his recent trip there was largely in the name of getting Saudi Arabia to participate in this. And then just yesterday, that was Wednesday, whatever the date was, May 14th, he invited Syria to, who has a brand new government with a former terrorist in charge of it, president. He asked them to join in the Abraham Accords and put specific conditions on it so that they would be somewhat trustworthy. So anyway, there is this alliance that is building, this accord in the name of normalization with Israel, whereas all of the surrounding nations seem to want them to cease to exist. Now there are these nations that saying, nope, we want to get along with you. We see the benefits of it. You're friends with the United States. We want to be friends with the United States. We want to trade. We want to have security in the region and peace. And so they're coming together and forming this Abraham Accord thing, which I think it was this last fall. I hope I haven't forgotten a year in there that I watched Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to the United Nations, saying how excited he and Israel are about the Abraham Accords and hope that they develop into an Abrahamic alliance, envisioning something like what NATO has in Europe, a security alliance, a military alliance. So it could become much more than just this normalization with trade and relationships. It could become a security alliance. Like I said, nothing like this has ever happened before, and something like it has been prophesied to occur just before the end of the age. Is it? I don't know. It could blow over. It could come and go, and Jesus not return for another 1,000 years. I don't know. But I do know that one thing that's going to happen before he comes back is this 10-nation alliance is going to take form. Some of these nations, like Syria, for example, they were just lobbing rockets at Israel, like a month ago. It's very fragile. Egypt, the longest term nation who's had a relationship now with Israel for a few decades, has just been engaging in military joint exercises with China. And building up their troops on the Sinai Peninsula. What's that about? Don't know for sure, but I'll talk about that some other time because Egypt does play a part in the future just prior to the return of Jesus. So why is this 10-nation so important? It's because that out of this 10-nation confederation or alliance will rise the antichrist, the biggest antagonist and arch villain of the Bible, the the puppet of Satan himself. Daniel in chapter 7 calls, he is symbolized, the Antichrist is symbolized by a little horn, like a ram's horn or a cow horn, which is seen coming up from the midst of 10 horns, which represent 10 kings or kingdoms. And so he comes up and has a rise to power out of this 10-nation alliance. So, are the Abraham Accords, along with the previous agreements with Jordan and Egypt, is that the 10-nation alliance? I don't know, but it is very worth watching. Because, like I said, this just does not happen all the time. It has never happened before, and it's happening now. So let's continue to see what happens. Let's get studied up on that Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 17, which, by the way, I'm not trying to sell you a book here, but I have just written a book on Daniel. It's called Daniel Way Beyond the Felt Board, where I talk about this kind of stuff in there, and I try to help people understand what's going on in those passages of scriptures. And before too long, I'll let you know how you can get an advanced copy. Hopefully the book will be out midsummer-ish. Still have some things to do. But as for now, until next time, which I got a lot to talk about with all this stuff, because it's very, very important, and it's not just like another day in paradise. There's things going on. But God's got our backs, especially if you are in Him and in His Word and trusting Him every day. And I hope you are. So until next time, may God bless you. Maranatha and Shalom.